So you're thinking of relocating and moving to a new city? In this video, we're going to talk about, are Zillow estimates really that accurate? Let me give you a little hint. They suck. So let's get after it right now. As I said, today we're going to talk about one of the things that we all do. It's so much fun to do, is look at the Zillow estimate, the Zestimate. And we're going to take a look and see how accurate that is. Now, this is not just about Zillow. This is about Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor. There's 100 other sites that offer what are called automated valuation models, okay? And they purport to give you a home's true value based on science. And the reality is that, look, it's a lot of fun to look at that number. And, it gives you good guideposts and guidelines. But really, the way that they sell it, the way that they say, oh, it's science, it's the algorithm, oh, it's, our formula is better than everybody else's, okay. But really, what makes up that science, what makes up those algorithms is what we used to call swag. And swag, if you've never heard of it, is a scientific, wild, but guess. Swag. Obviously the A is something else, but so scientific, wild guess. So before we do that, let me just have you run an experiment. We're talking about science here. I want you to run an experiment. Go and put your house, a house that you're looking at, not one that's on the market. Don't do that. And I want you to go to each of the 4 big sites, Zillow, Redfin, Realtor, and Trulia. Go and put that address in there and see what estimate they give you. Now, if this were science, right? I know if I put 1 plus 1, if this were math, if I put 1 plus 1 together, it's 2. Shouldn't I get 2 every time? That's not what happens. You're gonna find that the data is wildly different from one site to the next. And why is that? Well, it goes into how they derive those numbers to begin with. All of the algorithms do a couple different things. They look at the public record first, okay? So that's your county recorder or your tax assessor, one of these different county level, in most cases, records to find out the information on a piece of property. All right, they're looking at the square footage, they're looking at the number of beds, the number of baths, the number of garage spaces, if there's a pool there, if there's fireplaces, those types of things. And you would even think that this information should be the same. However, I have seen different listings on 2 different sites show different numbers of bedrooms for the same house, different square footage for the same house. All of these different, so you're going, where are they getting this information? Because some of it is absolute crap and some of it is correct. Point number 2 is they look at homes that are similar to that house, that subject property that you're looking at. So the house that you're trying to find your Zestimate for is going to look at that, and they're going to look at other houses that match the criteria similar to that in a surrounding area, right, and see what's sold in those areas, what's for sale, what are the different offer prices, list prices, what are the sale prices that have happened. And they're going to go back at data looking anywhere from 3 to 6 months to a year, and sometimes even farther. Now, there's a couple of drawbacks that we're going to talk about that. And let me give you one other thing. And actually, I'll save this for a bonus. You got to watch till later because there's one really sneaky thing that Zillow does. Zillow in particular does. But I think some of the other ones have caught on and do it too. But I'm going to give you this little trick that they use a little bit later. And so let's get back to this. So they look at, different properties in a radius of of where the subject property is to find other houses that have sold. And that's how they start to determine, okay, I think this house should be worth this. This, they give different weights to how close it is, how far away it is, how long in time ago it was sold, all of those different things. And they try and balance all those numbers and come to a current value. Then they come and take all of that data that they get, right? And then they run it through their complex scientific analytical algorithm. And they come up with a number. And they all have catchy names for that number. But it's all just an automated valuation model. It's trying to come up with, this is, what we think the value is of this. Now, let me tell you, you think that number would be good, right? But let me give you one example that I think is hilarious about how bad sometimes these numbers can be. The CEO of Zillow, the one who puts out the number, the one who created the algorithm, who created the model to come up with the valuation. His home had a Zestimate of $1.75 million. He put it on the market. It sold for $1.05 million. Where was that other $700,000 in the Zestimate? That's a big difference. Now, on average, you can be off, the estimates that they pump out can be off anywhere from 5 to 15%, but that makes a big difference. On a $500,000 house, a 10% difference is a $50,000 swing in the estimate. And that has real world implications. You either list your house for too little because it should have been worth $550,000, or you list it for too much and you list it for $500,000 when it's really worth $450,000, and you don't get any action on it either way because you're not priced correctly. And same thing on the buyer side. You think because the computer's estimate says it's worth $500,000, you could overpay by saying that, when you could make a different scenario, right? And you could go in and show the data and say, look, these models are wrong. Here, the house is only worth $450,000. This is what we're offering you. That's a big difference, right? It's why the Zestimate for the CEOs was $1.75 million, but he took $1.05 because the real number was $1.05, not $1.75. So why is this number so wildly inaccurate? First of all, no human ever looks at this number. This is purely data that's fed into a computer. It goes in and a number comes out. There's another, we talk about swag at the beginning. There's another one that people in the computer world will know, and it's GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's exactly what's happening here. You're getting a lot of garbage in on the front end when they put in these numbers. First of all, we already talked about maybe the numbers that they're pulling for number of beds, number of baths, square footage is off. Okay, so that's one area. But the next thing, let's take a look at the comparables that they use. They look at a radius, and it doesn't matter where that radius is and what the surrounding neighborhoods are. Let me just give you a little story. I had a house on Swall Drive in Beverly Hills. Okay, and 2 streets over was La Cienega. Wasn't more than a quarter mile away. Okay, the houses that were on La Cienega were not priced the same as the houses in Beverly Hills on Swall. Here in Vegas, it's also a different story because we have a lot of the way that the construction here, because it's a little bit newer area, things are constructed. We have a lot of HOAs and a lot of developments, right? And you can have one development here and then a different development right next to it. Now, all the homes in this development are priced very comparable, right? Because they're the same models, they're the same this. In the development next to it, they were going for a different demographic, a different price point. And so those houses are priced less expensive than the ones here. When you just look at a radius, you take into account the really expensive houses with the ones that are less expensive, and it averages them in the middle, right? So the houses that are in the less expensive development get a bump in their number. The houses that are in the more expensive development get a decrease in their value according to the computer models. So that's one huge limitation of that. Like I said, here in Vegas, you have to really dial it down and look at the neighborhood that you're looking in. You cannot look, for the most part, in a half-mile radius, which is the standard, the general average that a lot of people use as a half-mile radius. Now, in other parts of the country, that does not hold true. For example, if you go, I know some of the markets that we've helped people in, like in St. Louis, right? In parts of St. Louis, there is no development like there is here in Vegas. So looking in that half-mile radius where everything is not so homogeneous makes a little more sense. But in the markets where it doesn't make sense, it really doesn't make sense. The other thing that the computer doesn't know is, was there a remodel to the house? The house was built 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and in some cases, there's been no updates to it. In some cases, it was fully gutted, redone, and looks like a brand new construction. The computer model doesn't know that information and can't spit out a number. So two houses, same square footage, same number of beds and baths, right next to each other, could have the same valuation on the big sites, right? But one hasn't been updated in 50 years. The one next to it just had a $200,000 upgrade. Why do they have the same number? Doesn't make any sense. The other thing that they don't know is, what if, there's issues in the house, plumbing issues. The AC went out and it's going to be 15 grand to fix it. Again, the computer model doesn't know these things. You don't know the latent or patent defects in a house unless you have eyes on it and somebody looking at it to give you that discerned opinion of what should the real valuation be for this house. The other thing that they don't see is, what if there's a busy freeway right behind the house? What if you hear traffic all night long? What if there's a train track right there? And you know what? That conductor at 3 o'clock in the morning loves to toot that horn as he goes past the house. You wouldn't know that from a computer model. It's just not going to show up in the data anywhere for you to see and be able to put that into your calculation and make that discernment as to what the home is really worth. And then on top of that, when you have a market that is shifting more than the normal, and that could be going up quickly or going down a little bit, the way that they look at the historical data, the solds that they use to give a valuation to the house, is they look at numbers ranging anywhere from, the most recent all the way to 6 months, 12 months, and sometimes longer, depending on how many homes have sold in the area. If the market is shifting quickly and you're looking at stuff from 6 months or a year ago, that number may have zero correlation to what today's value is. Now, we saw that in the past 2 years, in 2020 to early 2022, as home prices exploded. You had to be ahead of the game and price it ahead of that, because we were growing just as a nation. The home prices were going up 20, 25% year over year, and the valuation models couldn't take into account that rapid growth, because what they were looking at were numbers that were so much older, they didn't fit within the model anymore because things were changing rapidly, daily sometimes. And now at the tail end of 2022, and we'll see what 2023 looks like, the market has flattened and it's actually decreased a little bit in some areas. But if you're looking at the numbers and trying to get a valuation today, but you're basing your valuation on things that sold 6 months ago, a year ago, man, your number is going to be wildly different than what it takes to get it sold or purchased today. It's just they're lagging in their trailing indicators of value, not leading indicators. And that's because they're using historical data, and that's just that's something that you have to look at. And if you don't make those corrections and you don't see where the market's heading and how your particular local market is, then you're not going to be able to make those corrections correctly. And you're going to end up with some wildly wrong valuations when you put it just through a computer model. But let me tell you, all that being said, they give you a good starting point, and there are some good parts to it. It gives you an idea, and it fulfills our human need for instant gratification and wanting to know a number now. Because the truth of the matter is, to get a true valuation, you need one of two things: a licensed certified appraiser to come in and take a look at each of those individual factors and make adjustments to that. Or you need an experienced local professional who's a realtor who can come in and do a very similar type of analysis, maybe not to the exact same standard as an appraiser, but a real good real estate agent, a real good veteran, is going to be able to look at the numbers to make those adjustments that the computer model just can't make. And that's one thing why it makes so much sense to work with somebody who is a pro, who knows what they're looking at, who knows how to take into account these different things. Because you're either going to end up paying too much for a house or making an offer that is not going to secure the house. Now, I told you, there is something sneaky that especially Zillow does, okay? And that is, they put the Zestimate up there, right? And the Zestimate, for example, let's take the CEO's house. That Zestimate before the house was listed, $1.75 million. What they do is when the house actually gets listed and there is a list price for that house, all of a sudden, the Zestimate price comes down and basically matches the list price, okay? Or it goes up to match the list price. So you see, they even recognize that there's factors that they're not taking into account, and when a real human looks at it, they come up with an actual price, an actual number, taking into account all those different things. Then they're going to say, all right, you know what, our model is a little bit off. Here's where it's off. Let's adjust it to what the human said. So in the end of all of this, hey, it's a win for humanity, and we'll see that the computers need a little bit more guidance and work to be able to take into account the experience and the nuance that goes into this. It's not just, numbers in, numbers out. There is nuance to finding the correct value. And unfortunately, the big players, they give you a good starting point, they give you something to go on, but do not hang your hat on that number. So I hope you understand how important getting that valuation is and why the valuations that are spit out by the computers on the big sites are absolute dog poo-poo. And why you should not hang your hat on them, and why you really need a professional, a set of eyes who knows what they're looking at, who knows how to take into account all those external factors to make adjustments to that valuation and get you a correct valuation. Because there's nothing worse than overpaying or under getting, making an offer price too low. I mean, look, There's a million mistakes to make in this business. And if you need some help with that, look, go ahead and get a hold of us, book a free call with us. Go to therelocationking.com and book a call, or you can contact us, text, call, email. All the information's in the contact information. All right, thanks for watching. That'll do it for today. And if I don't see you in my neighborhood, I'll see you on the next video.